Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Sage. I'm the Executive Director of the area, and welcome to the latest and last area webinar of 2020. I'm sure you all agree that this year has been a challenging and interesting year, and it's great to finish the year on a really interesting subject and working with the area member Atheer team on an AR maturity model. So I'm very looking forward to the kind of content and discussion for today. But as for many of you who have attended the area webinars before, let me give you a quick introduction of the area and what we are trying to achieve. So next slide, please, Jeff. So the AREA, Augmented Reality Enterprise Alliance, it's a global membership-funded, not-for-profit alliance dedicated to helping accelerate the adoption of enterprise AR. And we do that by supporting the growth of a comprehensive ecosystem where kind of webinars and sharing information is one of the many activities that we do. Next slide, please, Jeff. To give you an idea of our membership, they're in 3 different segments. We have a number of companies that are deploying AR technologies and solutions. We have a bigger group of companies that provide those AR solutions, including hardware, software, consultancies, and many companies in between that as well. And then finally, kind of non-commercial companies like government agencies, research institutes, universities, and standards organization that often bring some insight and knowledge. And by bringing all of these groups and segments together and focusing on some of the kind of key challenges, we're really helping accelerate the adoption of enterprise AR. Next slide, please, Jeff. Just at a high level, what the area does and how we support the ecosystem, we call these our 4 strategic pillars. The first one is about delivering thought leadership, and today's webinar is a great example of that. But it's really focusing on the content that business decision makers need to help them understand and successfully deploy AR technology. And we tend to break that down into 4 things. We're very keen to explain what problems can be solved, show examples of those problems being solved in real life, so the case studies, what technologies are needed, and most importantly, the ROI, return on investment. Also, networking, bringing the ecosystem and the members together, really to kind of connect, share those experiences and learn from each other. And we find that's a very strong benefit of companies actually being able to share and not to make the same mistakes that maybe other companies have done and trying to deploy the technology. On the educate side, that's really about closing the AR skills gap and working with universities and educational organizations to help them define what AR courses could look like, to do guest lecturing, to set challenges to universities, and also help develop outplacement so we can create a steady line of workers coming into our industry. And then finally, it's about reducing barriers to adoption, where we have a number of different committees focusing on things like security, safety, human factors, marketing, and we have a very strong research committee and capability that's helped driving some really interesting and useful research to, again, help the members successfully deploy the technology. Okay, next slide, please, Jeff. And just to remind you that there are lots and lots, and this year has been the year of webinars, that you can have a look at the area on the area page, area resources under the videos part, and you can see, I think there is over 40 different webinars now, and please, of course, you can go to the area YouTube channel page to see them as well. Okay, so I think that's enough about me. Next slide, please, Jeff. Fantastic. So it's my pleasure to hand over to 2 gentlemen I've been working with for a while from Atheer, Nag and Jeff. Jeff and Nag, I'll hand over to you guys and looking forward to hearing what you've got to say and asking a few questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark, and much appreciation for all of the work that AREA has done over the last number of years. We've had the opportunity to work together. Nag and I are going to talk today about our maturity model. This is something we developed over the last several years, and we call it a framework for frontline productivity planning. And at the moment, we're going to look at it in the context of an enterprise world that is looking at strategies for how to deal with and look forward to COVID recovery. So we'll start with just looking at the fact that the world didn't just discover the benefits of enterprise AR in 2020. There's been a lot of discussion about how it's helped, enterprise AR has helped enterprises deal with the impact of COVID-19, and that's absolutely true. But we know from having worked in this industry for a number of years that enterprises were already working on ways to leverage the power of enterprise AR in their organizations. So back last year at the Enterprise Wearable Technology Summit, EWTS, we did survey a number of organizations and found that there was already keen interest in industries like manufacturing, warehouse and logistics, utilities and energy, automotive, oil and gas, aviation. And at that point, about 18% of the people that we surveyed at this wearables conference had said that they'd already launched AR. But 42% were exploring. So when we start talking about what's happened since, it's in the context of a number of things that were already underway. Nag, do you want to share a bit more about what you saw from our customers in the period before COVID?
Sure, Jeff. Thanks everyone for the opportunity to talk about this topic. As Jeff mentioned, there's organizations are looking at it at different stages, and we're always excited because the more the merrier when it comes to adoption or looking at augmented reality in general and possibly exploring the benefits. I would say that people and organizations were looking at augmented reality, but in different lenses or perspectives. Everything could be from the practicality of it, the ability to be able to manage it in terms of what happens when there are travel restrictions or difficulties getting to the place where you need to go, or some restrictions in the workplace, cost savings, safety, could be any of those reasons. And finally, basically, I would almost say it's like a blend of all of those things. It's literally like the acceptance of the technology in general. And as this slide shows, different industries have adopted it in different ways. But the common thread amongst all of them is the eagerness to be able to look to see how these technologies can benefit them in meaningful ways and allow their users to be more productive, to work safer, faster, and better.
Yep, and since the onset of COVID, we have seen significant acceleration. So some of you may have seen the stories in the press about our work with Porsche Cars North America and the fact that they did triple their usage of their AR implementation in the first few months of the pandemic, as they were looking for better ways to empower them to better serve their customers. And we've also seen a number of cases where existing customers have accelerated their schedules, where they were planning a certain number of deployments in the first quarter, for example, and then suddenly said, no, actually, we need to deploy all of those, the deployments for the entire year in this first quarter. And we've had other cases where existing enterprises who were planning on using it for just one use case suddenly found there were 2 or 3 other use cases which came about because they had people who couldn't travel, or they had other situations where they needed enterprise AR, where suddenly it became really important to do it right away. Nag, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think you've covered most of the key reasons why the adoption is accelerated. And as mentioned earlier, it's probably a combination of all of these reasons. And I would say that, one of the interesting things for this year is how users across various industries have increasingly been receptive and are able to adopt to these kind of remote technologies, right? So the adoption and embrace of such technologies in general has made it easier in a lot of ways for people to look and say, okay, if I could attend a meeting virtually, I could try a few more things as well. I could see if I could actually help someone remotely. I could see if I could execute some work instructions and guide them as they go through the process. So we believe that as that embrace of these technologies have definitely and significantly accelerated the adoption in the last year.
Thanks, Nag. And what we wanted to kind of cover here was the fact that even though a lot of people are coming to enterprise AR because they've got a very specific need right now that may well have been driven by challenges that the pandemic has brought about. When you're implementing enterprise AR, it's still a journey. You're going to start from one place, and that place, as I said, may well be because you're dealing with a particular business challenge right now, but you've got somewhere you want to get to. And what our AR maturity model allows you to do is to say, okay, well, what does that destination look like? And the way we look at it, there's 4 pieces to it. There's in stage 1, or level 1, you're exploring AR. You're kind of trying various different things that because it looks interesting and maybe you've got a use case in mind. If that's successful, and we'll go into detail about how you would measure whether or not it's successful, then you're going to actually start deploying it. And you're going to have AR in production in some element of your enterprise. And you're going to see some benefits from that, and then you're going to realize, oh, this could actually have broader applicability. And then in terms of that broader applicability, you want to look at how do I connect that to a lot of the existing IT infrastructure that I may have, the existing data. How can I bring all of the goodness of that to frontline teams, which traditionally have been significantly underserved by IT and by availability of data. And then finally, how do I take all of what I built there to become leading and to really use AR as a competitive advantage? With that overview, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take a little poll right now, and we're going to see, based just on this kind of broad understanding, where do you see yourselves right now in terms of where you sit in terms of the maturity model. And then we're going to do this poll again at the end to see if you have a different perception of it once we've gone into this in detail. So I think Mark is launching the poll right now, and we'll give everybody a minute or two to answer the poll. And while they're doing that, do you have anything you want to add to that, Nag?
I think one of the as we're talking about this maturity model, in some ways, being a technology partner, but also a company that evangelizes augmented reality, right? We talk to a lot of organizations, big and small, and at various types of questions, various needs, and we felt that creating such a framework would allow enterprises kind of a way to articulate their vision and a way, as you said, Jeff, to kind of figure out where they want to go next, right? So this model is kind of designed to be more of a tool for planning how to evolve from a stage where maybe an organization is just exploring and learning to one where they think that augmented reality provides a true strategic advantage.
Fantastic. So I think we have some poll results now. Mark, are you going to be able to share those for us?
Okay, they should be shared. Can you see them?
Yes, we're seeing them, Mark. It looks like 36% majority are still in the exploring stage, 27% when they're deploying, fairly significant number, better than I thought for connecting, and then a few of them as well in the leading stage as well.
Fantastic. And sorry, guys, I just want to mention, I should have at the start, I'm very bad, but please, reminder to all the attendees, if you have any questions, you can put them in the questions box. We'll be taking questions at the end, so please do that anytime through the presentation if there's anything you'd like to clarify or make comment and stuff like that. Okay, I'm going to hide this and we'll go back to the presentation.
Thanks so much to you both. So we're now going to dive into the maturity model itself and look at each stage in detail. And I'm going to hand over to you, Nag, for this.
Thank you, Jeff. And as we talked about in the brief overview, and there's material in the slide, so I won't repeat all of that. But one thing to note is exploring is obviously the entry point for a lot of companies looking to see what augmented reality is about, and that a lot of it stems from interest. You might have heard about it, you might have seen a video, you might have watched another company's case study trying to implement augmented reality, and it could be for any department within the company, right? It could be you could be looking at it for training use cases, it could be for field services, could be MRO. So at this stage, it's since it's exploring and exploration, it's entirely possible that you may not be clear on what department might use it the most, what use case would work well for the organization. And sometimes there's a lot of terminology thrown in as well. You may not be clear, well, is this augmented reality that we need? Is it virtual reality? Is it extended reality? Some of them call it mixed reality as well, right? To be able to kind of look at and see, what are the differences between them and which ones might be more suitable for your specific needs, right? And in addition, you have the whole notion of augmented reality being available in mobile devices as well as hands-free or wearables. And so knowing which ones might be better, again, on a case-by-case basis, right? And I think at this point, what most organizations should be looking to get out of this is to say, okay, for our setup, for our distribution of the workforce and the type of work that we do, which technology might be more productive, will enable the users to work more safely, collaborate more effectively, and overall efficiency, right? And that, that's kind of where this stage will look to address. And we're going to talk here about a set of activities that define this stage and what it would take to go from this to the next one.
So
any
can
questions?
Yeah, Nag, I think it's really interesting, and given that enterprise AR is a few years old, the area has been around for, well, I've been leading it for 5 years, and it's been for many years before that. Are you finding that there's a kind of drop in the percentage of customers at this exploring stage? Perhaps you're seeing more kind of customers now that have done a pilot or two or done a bit more work, pushed a few devices, and then getting ready to see, do a more deliberate approach and things like that. Are you seeing that kind of maturity happening?
Yeah, we do actually. A lot. The overall awareness has increased, right? And so even at this early stage, we do get customers coming with specific things, saying, "Hey, what about this particular variable? Will this help for my use case? What about can it support this type of content?" And then they're also talking a little bit about which specific business might be benefiting out of this, right? So even though at this stage a lot of organizations, there might be an innovation department, right, or there's an innovation program that leads it, but they bring the right people along with them, and they'll be talking about what might be needed to get going on a trial or a proof of concept. So there's a lot more awareness in the last couple of years, and we see a lot more organizations get ready to either be aware of the activities that are needed or have the right stakeholders in place.
Great, thank you.
All right. So I think let's talk a little bit about some of the activities in this stage. Jeff, you want to add something here, or shall I dive in?
No, I was going to just say, so what you see here is the detail of what's involved at this beginning stage. So when you're exploring, there are a number of activities, strategies, technologies you're going to be exploring, some content you might be starting to think about creating, a budget that you'll need to start thinking about having, and being aware that this all exists within an IT landscape. So the thing is that when a lot of people start, they'll start it off in an ad hoc fashion, and may be aware of one or two of these considerations, but not all of them. So what we've tried to do here is to give you an idea of, okay, as you're at stage one and you're excited, and maybe you bought a pair of smart glasses, and you're starting to think about use cases, be aware that if you want to get to the stage where enterprise AR is going to be a real strategic advantage, you need to have an awareness that it exists within an ecosystem. And these are all the key pieces of that.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jeff. I think that let me pick up on a couple of items that you mentioned, right? Specifically, technology. I think that having a sense of what technology is used currently in the organization and what might be amenable is useful, because if it's especially a first-time usage, some of the users might want to try some wearables. Could be a binocular, could be a monocular version, see which ones might make more sense. The work conditions might be different, so that would dictate some of these choices. And sometimes the answer might be looking to see what's available with every user. It could be a company issued tablet or a smartphone that also support these capabilities, and maybe that would be the place where you can get started to try out for some of the use cases. The other one that you hinted towards about is also regarding content. Here, the thing to note is, kind of almost organizations to look at the inventory of content that they already have in-house. That could be everything from, disconnected content, manuals, worksheets, instructions, and as well as possibly some instructions that could be, coming in from another system that could be just printed out and used in a manual fashion. So getting an inventory of those and seeing which ones of those are suitable to be put into this kind of a augmented reality system would set the stage to get ready for when you can actually start using them.
Can I just add, guys? I think these kind of 5 steps are fantastic, and they really kind of relate to them. But there are a couple, and towards the end or the right-hand side, the budget and getting the IT departments involved at the earlier stage, I just find really crucial. And it'd be great to get your kind of feedback and thoughts on these and why they're important.
Yeah, that's a good question, Mark. I think that having a sense of where the budget comes from at this point will be very useful. Typically, as indicated here, this could could come from an innovation program or an innovation department, and there's usually a budget. And sometimes it's different where it's driven by a line of business, right? And so the specific department will basically have budget to be able to try out and explore some of these technologies. But what we generally say is you kind of have to go beyond it, right? You should be able to start thinking about having a dedicated budget for this, and not just something that you depend on as discretionary, because it's entirely likely that once you start on this process, you're going to see that you will need to be able to add more activities, add more people to make this successful. So thinking about a dedicated budget from just being an initial discretionary one would be very valuable to make further progress in the stages.
Great, thank you.
Okay. All right, Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit about what deploying means here, and I'll add some color?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so you've been through stage one and you've looked at, okay, I've got this use case, I've got a few things where I could kind of prove out some value here. And you've decided, okay, in a test environment or in a proof of concept, this makes sense. I've got some ROI, I'm getting some buy-in around this one particular use, and I'm going to go ahead and deploy. So when you start to deploy, then you're thinking, okay, well, I'm actually going to integrate this in my business. So it has to work. It has to have all of the support. And now you need to start thinking a little bit farther forward. Because you're going to make this a part of the way that you do business, and that has a number of implications. And maybe you want to talk a bit about that, Nag.
Absolutely. I think that I think this would be good when we talk about specific examples here, right? So an example that you see on the screen here is basically, something that's commonly known as remote assistance or see what I see video calling technology, right? So here you're basically trying to make sure that this technology is available with the right set of users, their peers and experts within a company, so that you can initiate such augmented reality enabled video sessions to be able to assist users out on the front line, guide them through various steps, and basically making sure that they're able to perform the jobs that they're assigned to do in a timely manner while not being able to be physically present with them, right? So that's an example of a specific business case. Typically the next thing that one would look at is any kinds of content. The content means basically making sure that you provide the right information to the users at the right time, right? So content should be coupled with the context. So having the right data sheets, the right manuals, the right videos for a person to be able to do their job while they're in front of the equipment is very useful. The other type of content would be, some kind of a guides or visual guides or step-by-step instructions. And so for that, what kind of content do you need? Do you already have some of those procedures in some digital format? Do you need to create some content that will allow the users to take advantage of the technology and present that instruction in the field of view as the user is working on it? So those kinds of things. So thinking about content and thinking about what needs to come into that at the time of deployment is probably one that will give the most bang for the buck.
Thanks, Nag. It's Mark again, and I find that really interesting. But one of the kind of key things I can see, and you mentioned in here, is that at this stage of maturity is having a kind of a really clear use case that people deploying it care about, but also the company really cares about. Is that fair? And can you talk a little bit about how enterprises can hit on the right use cases?
Yeah, it's actually kind of an interesting thing is, in some ways, it's good to have a clear kind of thinking about a particular use case. Maybe that's a pain point that you would need to solve. But what we encourage organizations is that, don't focus on that one alone, because you might think that that might be one that could be solved well with use of this technology, but it might be possible that there are other ones that you haven't thought of. And usually thinking about it in a bigger term, right? And thinking about whether it'll help not just in one particular group of users or one use case, but in various scenarios, would allow for the deploying stage to be successful, because then you can think of it in terms of, okay, for one particular use case, I need these users to have a wearable device. For another one, actually, what they realistically will have on them is some kind of a mobile device or a tablet. So different use cases have different needs, and thinking about them in totality will allow the organization to prepare for a deployment, and also think about which of those may have things that you could do to improve engagement and adoption. So I think we encourage organizations to think about all the potential use cases. And maybe you could start with a specific one, but having the overall plan in mind would really benefit as you try to progress to the next stage.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, and so here we get into the detail of what it looks like to deploy. So a couple of key things here that typically the strategy at this stage is still that you're somewhat reactive. You're still reacting to whatever drew you to deploy in the first place. And you're still reacting to the specific requests or business needs that drove you to explore AR in the first place. But your activities do start to change. You start to think about, okay, do we have an operating model? Do we have a governance framework for this? Have we defined what the metrics are going to be for success going forward? We knew what it was in the proof of concept, but as we deploy more broadly and as we have more use cases, how are we thinking about that? As we start to think about content, are we starting to select key content, like maybe on the 80-20 rule? What's the 20% of content that's going to have impact for 80% of the organization? And are there existing sets of work instructions that we can augment and make available digitally? And then finally, how does IT play a role here? And what budgets do we need? Nag, do you want to provide a bit more detail there?
Yeah, I think that you've covered most of the salient points around technology, strategies, and content. But one of the things that I would like to also highlight is the role of IT. Typically at this stage, corporate IT would be involved, because if you're going to deploy such a technology, you would need to make sure it works within the company's security infrastructure, their policies, right? So you would be making sure IT is involved right from the beginning, the buy-in is there, it's not a surprise, and typically something that can also go on approved devices, right? So there's probably going to be some security evaluations that would have been done in terms of what data goes back in and out. Is there some data leaving the system, or is it going to be basically just being kept in place? What kind of mobile devices are going to be used, if there's any? How do such applications get distributed to the devices? How are those devices managed? So those are all things that you would be talking to IT about. So it sets the stage to make sure that once these kind of applications are inside an organization, and you mentioned this earlier, Jeff, that it sets the stage to be talking to IT about also exchanging data with other IT approved systems and solutions that are available. And we'll talk about it in the next stages.
And if I could just kind of add, and it's all of those are very relevant. The one part I've seen in the deployment or deploying kind of phase is around the content, and often that comes as a bit of a shock or an extra cost to the business. So much so that one of the recent area projects, research projects, was about taking big kind of 3D assets and making it available within a AR kind of system and stuff like that. Can you talk kind of a little bit about how companies are actually overcoming some of these content problems and what you see in the marketplace?
Absolutely, Mark. I mean, as the saying goes, content is king, right? And having a focus on it and thinking about it earlier on is really important. Jeff mentioned this, and he hinted toward this earlier, is that what we see with organizations and what we encourage everyone is that, yes, there are going to be different types of content available inside a company, but then there's a lot of low-hanging fruit too, right? You might have the ability to augment simple digital, task flows or step-by-step instructions, right? That could be nothing more than a checklist or a set of steps that you have to do to do routine maintenance. Those are low-hanging fruit that can be quickly brought into the system, and that serves as a content that could be readily used by those frontline workers. Sometimes it could be instruction manuals, data sheets about specific devices or equipment, and those could also be brought in and be made available in the within the system. Right? It doesn't mean that it's created here, but it could be rendered in the right place. And you hinted towards 2D and 3D content. Yes, those are actually also available in a lot of companies. There could be CAD models, there could be diagrams, or other kinds of content that exists. And depending on the use case, they might be more useful than in others. So for example, if you want to be able to do in-depth training of a particular machine or an engine, then be able to render the 3D model and show and delve into each part would be useful, but know fully well with a wide eye open that creating such content and maintaining such content needs to be planned ahead of time, budgeted, and then this, because a lot of these systems tend to display the content or render the content, but creation of them would have to be done with a lot of help and time share from the organization resources. So planning for that is to be undertaken by all those organizations.
Thanks, Nag. And just say there's kind of 10 minutes left, gentlemen. So just to give you a time check.
Yeah, so let's go through this stage pretty quickly. What I'm going to do here is to just, this is in some ways the heart of the different stages, right? This is the stage where, the value of augmented realities should now be clear, because there have been use cases that have been deployed. There's essentially broad support within various departments in the organization, right? We talked about how IT plays a key role in here. That bought into it. You've got budgets approved, and in some ways it's one of the more detailed, intensive, but the complex part of the maturity stage. And I think that at this point, the key takeaway is that you are looking at this as more of not just in isolation, but how AR can basically work well, play well with other systems within enterprises, like PLM systems, like MES systems, like workflow management systems, like learning or content systems. And those are what constitute this stage, and that's why we rightly called it the connecting stage. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the activities within it, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I'm going to do in the interest of time is switch to the detail here. Yep. One of the key things for this connecting is that you need to look in detail at each of these 6 categories. So part of them is looking at all of the use cases. And some of them are going to be connected, and some of them are going to be completely disconnected. But you want to have at this point a real broad sense of what all those use cases are and how you can make the most of those. We've talked about content quite a bit, but this is an area where we can really leverage a lot of the existing content, how to look at how to bring some of that content forward and make it available to frontline teams. In fact, we have one example, Nag, that you might want to talk a bit about. That was our work with Anglo American.
Yeah, and I think that very briefly, in the interest of time, this particular organization had their content already set up as small learning or training solutions or content available, and they wanted to use that same single source authoring platform as a way to be able to also push relevant work instructions to the frontline team members. So we worked with them and provided a way in which they could integrate their content management system with the augmented reality platform that Atheer has to be able to use that content. In other words, you don't have to create from scratch. You leverage what's already there, recreate it in a way that makes sense in the AR world, and show it as step-by-step instructions for users to execute certain tasks, and then see the results of it as they acquire specific skills as well. So that was an example of how the content management system came into play. One last point to note here is, and this is the key, if you look at the technology, the last bullet is kind of thinking about the process. You think about end-to-end process. Typically, in most organizations, every stage of the process involves information and data coming from other systems. So thinking about the process, thinking about the end-to-end process integration, where a work order or a job might come in, how does it show up once that job is completed, what needs to go back to that upstream system, if there's some data that needs to be shown about a particular equipment, if it's IoT data, that all of that comes into play in this stage. So we typically spend a lot of time with customers here so that they get the maximum value of using the data that's already present in the system and connect it to their AR system of choice.
Fantastic, thank you. Just a really quick question and a reminder for everyone listening, please ask your questions in the question box. But going back to the connecting kind of stage, there seems a lot going on. Is it fair to say that kind of enterprises spend most of their time in the connecting phase, or is that not quite true?
We would think so. I think that to answer it in a very kind of short way is that if you've done the legwork and planning from the previous stages, connecting would be basically making sure you're tying all the dots together, right? So preparation for that stage would be making sure you've got the right, talking to the right stakeholders, the right departments, IT, everything being in one place. Then it's obviously time consuming, but it's also the most interesting and thought-provoking of those stages. Yes.
Thanks for that, Nag and Mark. So we're now at the final stage where you're really looking at enterprise AR as a competitive advantage. And one of the key things here, and you'll see this when we go into the detail, is that you're looking at getting some senior management focus on this, because by the time you've integrated a lot of the existing enterprise systems and made available key information to and from the front line, then it should be making enough of an impact that it's going to be significant for executives in the C-suite. And here's some detail of that that perhaps you want to talk to a bit, Nag.
Yeah, I think that this in some ways is the nirvana, right? This is basically the stage where it's fully integrated. AR is part of the fabric of the company's ecosystem of applications and systems and processes, right? And so all of the key people and processes will be augmented. The business processes have adjusted. Your kind of the strategies are in place to be able to take advantage of all the data that's coming, right? So this is kind of the keys. This is where you start to realize the benefits of it. You can now look at all the data that's coming in and out, look at the data that's generated, and then maybe you can put it to use by you can start to get predictive information about it. So you can kind of think of going from a reactive set of steps to proactive maintenance, proactive steps to make sure that things are working fine before they run into a problem, proactive checks, if you will, and kind of the idea of continuous improvement to make sure that users are trained and ready to go and can take advantage of these technologies to collaborate and work better across different regions. And then the one key thing I will kind of mention here is, we talk a little bit about the technology in terms of 5G and the edge. So this is very exciting. And with those technologies coming into play, you're talking about taking advantage of AR, but with much better latency. And the ability to also, keep some of this data at the edge so that they can be retrieved quickly and contextually at the time of the need, right? So this is when you can essentially leverage such technology to get a force multiplier effect.
Thank you for that, Nag.
Fantastic.
And we're almost out of time here. So I think the last thing that we had, other than Q&A, and given that we're almost out of time, if you have asked any questions and we don't have time to get to them, please know that we will be able to get to you offline. So don't be shy about asking the questions, even though we may not be able to get to them. At this point, I was going to repeat the poll here and just see if people's views of where they feel that they are have evolved after having seen the detail of what's in the maturity model. So I'll give you just a few seconds for that, and then we might have time for a question or two. And I will also let you know that this maturity model is available for download on our website. You can see the email address there, sorry, the website address there, and you will be getting an email from us providing you with details for where to download the maturity model, both the full version and a simplified view, as well as a detailed white paper that we've produced about the maturity model. In addition to which, there will be a link to a recording of this webinar.
Thanks, Jeff. And just as we're finishing off the poll here, I think, a little summary for myself, this kind of maturity model really helps not only understand where you are in the kind of steps or in the model, but also what you probably need to do still to move you on to the next phase. It's a great kind of framework that you can discuss within the organization with the stakeholders and the workers. So, thank you for kind of sharing the insights here. I'm just going to close the poll now and share it with everybody. There we go. So just a quick reminder of the first time we did this this slide. We had 36% on exploring, 27% on deploying, 18% on connecting, and 18% on leading. So it's great to see still some companies leading there, Jeff and Nag, and that's super exciting. But maybe in a bit of hindsight, companies are still going through the kind of process. Any thoughts or final comments on this?
Nag, I'll pass it to you for that. Well, one thing I will say is that, yeah, I think once people see the potential that they can get in the leading stage, it does give some pause for thought about, I could do this, that, or this has got a potential for even broader impact than I thought was possible.
It's exactly right, and somewhat not surprising in the poll results is because typically, you get more users thinking about, okay, I'm not quite where I want to be, so I need to think more before I get to the next stage and plan more. So, and that's what this framework is intended to do, to help organizations move through that to this exciting new world of augmented reality.
Fantastic. Well, kind of slightly sadly, we haven't got any questions from the audience. They've either just been blown away by the quality and the great kind of content, which I'm sure is the case. But if you do have questions, obviously, feel free to contact myself or, Nag and Jeff had put their contact details, and I can certainly pass the things on to them. Finally, guys, we're a little bit over time. Just want to thank you for the webinar today, and also this kind of model. It really is a useful framework for organizations to help them understand. Certainly when we're working on a set of area events next year, and we would welcome you to come and do this in a bit more of an interactive way with participants and being able to get into more detail. So thank you both for this great insights. Want to wish everybody a great holiday and break, and look forward to catching you all in 2021 and making sure that we continue to push augmented reality forward. So Jeff and Nag, thank you very much indeed for your great insights.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.